Nurses have typically not been very happy with the media over the years, and this became apparent with the Ebola news story of 2014, in which many nurses felt the media portrayed the nursing profession in an unfavorable light. Because of this general discontent with media coverage, some nursing organizations have adopted media censorship strategies, such as letters and petitions demanding favorable media coverage. However, censorship is not typically an effective media strategy. Not only does it impede reporters' freedom of speech rights, but censorship also has the unfortunate effect of cutting off all communication with healthcare journalists. Hi, my name is Elizabeth Leary. I am a Yale University doctoral nursing candidate and a former television news producer. What I propose is that nurse leaders view the press much like they would a patient, with better understanding and hopefully better communication in the future. This tutorial is designed to help you meet that challenge by explaining where health journalists are coming from, how the media operates, as well as what nurse leaders can do to enhance media communication in the future. What do you need to understand about the media? The most important thing is that traditional media is a dying business. If our patient is a healthcare reporter, it is highly likely that they have lost their job, in the process of losing their job, or they will lose their job in the not too distant future. As famed investor Warren Buffett recently stated, quote, "Newspapers are going downhill. The transition to internet has not worked in digital." What does this mean for news coverage? It means that most of the journalists are under tremendous pressure to generate eyeballs, large audiences, which in turn generate much needed advertising revenue. This is why journalists are under pressure to generate highly dramatic, sensational news stories which attract a lot of attention.
So often what the press wants to do is to turn that conversation into a turf battle, because it's much more interesting to write about the doctors versus the nurses battle than to talk about, a more academic or political approach to scope of practice battles. And the other unfortunate thing that happens with the media is when there's a bad outcome that gets a lot of press. The media are really interested in covering that. They may not be so interested in all that work that midwives do every day around all kinds of care, but the bad outcome is what gets the press. So I think that's one of the biggest challenges is how do you take advantage of what might be a crisis and the interest of the press? And I wonder how often nurse leaders shy away from opportunities with the media because the invitation has come as a result of some bad outcome or some bad piece of news that they're being asked to comment on.
Due to the harsh economic realities of today's news reporting environment, most journalists are freelancers who make very little money and, more importantly, don't have health benefits, including health insurance. In fact, some reporters make so little money that they actually qualify for Medicaid. This is why journalists tend to view some healthcare executives and, by extension, affiliated nurse executives with suspicion. In many journalists' eyes, you may be working for an enterprise which, in their view, values profit over patients. This is why hospital associations are often banned from health journalist conferences, while labor unions, which endorse health care for all, are typically welcomed with open arms. So what can we, as nurse leaders, do about this? First, you need to assess the reporter's perception, much like you would assess a patient. Do you work for a for-profit health concern? Or do you work for a nonprofit, charity, or academic institution? Where you are employed can make a big difference in how the health journalist perceives you as a news source. Journalists are more prone to trust and use sources who work for nonprofit labor, charity, or academic institutions because they tend to view these news sources as more trustworthy. Journalists' perception may also be greatly influenced by the type of story they are writing, as well as the publication they are writing for. There's a big difference between speaking with an investigative reporter doing an expose on the Board of Nursing versus a lifestyle reporter who is writing a story on diet for diabetics. This is why it's important to assess not only the reporter themselves, but the story context and content. In taking all of this into consideration, never forget the power of the nurse leader's voice as patient advocate. Even if a reporter views you and your employer with suspicion, these perceptions can be overcome with caring and compassionate messaging, because even the most skeptical reporter can be won over with the power of the nurse leader's voice as patient advocate.